Which hosts did Dolores bring with her into the outside world, and who is hidden inside Charlotte Hale? Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to Deep Geek. I'll be covering Westworld Season 3 in full, so if you want episode breakdowns, explanations, live discussions and much more, please click on the subscribe button in the bottom right of your screen, and the bell icon. It's been one of the biggest mysteries in Westworld since the end of Season 2. Which hosts did Dolores bring with her off the island? She brought 5 host consciousness pearls with her, and the showrunners confirmed at the time that that did mean that these are 5 hosts, not just stored data on the pearls. So there are potentially 5 hosts out in the real world in Season 3, in addition to Dolores. As Dolores has the ability to print new host bodies to whatever shape she wants, these hosts could look like anyone. We shouldn't be surprised to find anyone in Season 3 who we think is a human turn out to be a host. We know the identity of one of the 5, Bernard. Why Dolores brought him back is worthy of a video on its own, because it definitely wasn't because she thought he would intentionally help her, but bring him back she did. The second is Charlotte Hale, or more accurately, whoever she put into Charlotte's body when she transferred her own consciousness back into her own body. For convenience, I'll just talk about this being Charlotte Hale from now on, rather than the host consciousness within Charlotte Hale. But let's be clear on this. The character and drives and personality of Charlotte Hale are gone. Dolores hasn't recreated her, she's put someone else into her body. Someone who is now pretending to be Charlotte. The third secret host we know about appeared at the end of episode 1. Dolores drew Martin Connells, the Insight security guy, out into the open, had him killed, and replaced him with a host looking like him. This was, no doubt, to aid the infiltration of Insight in some way. We do have some clues as to who this host now masquerading as Martin Connells might be, because we get a couple of lines of dialogue from when the host was looking like Connells, but had no need to hide their true personality, when they were killing him. Without any qualms at all, this host came up, put a gun to Connell's head, and remarked pithily to him, "Don't worry, I can't imagine anyone's going to miss you," before shooting him dead with one shot like a pro. Then, seeing that Dolores was injured, they said, "You're hurt. Badly." There was no empathy there or concern, just a statement of the facts, and when Dolores tells them to leave her and just get on with the plan, they do so immediately. So we have a cold-blooded killer who enjoys taunting victims before killing them, has pretty low empathy, and follows Dolores' orders without question. This seems very, very much like how Angela was in Season 2. Perhaps also the heartless Teddy we saw for a few episodes in Season 2, but he turned out to still have a heart after all. So my best guess at the moment is that it is Angela inside Connells. This makes a lot of sense because Dolores will have wanted at least one loyal, dependable and capable killer on her team. So we have Bernard, who is himself, Charlotte, who we'll get onto in just one second, and Martin Connells, who we don't know but is probably Angela or someone like that. 3 hosts that we know about, leaving 2 as a complete mystery so far. We can probably expect them to be revealed later in the season. But let's get back to Charlotte, and trying to figure out who that might be. First of all, we have to say that the field of potential hosts, in theory, is wide open. Even based on the things we saw on screen, we know that Dolores had access to a huge number of host consciousnesses that she might have copied across to those pearls. There are all the hosts who ended up in the Sublime, for instance, that host heaven, and even though the Cradle was destroyed with all the host backup data, there's no reason why she couldn't have picked up some more host pearls while she was in the park. She took Teddy's with her, for example. Added to that, we know that she can recreate people based on her memories of them alone. That's what she did with Bernard. In fact, Dolores built Bernard in the first place, decades ago, from memories of Arnold, just tweaking him a little at the edges to get past that problem of human brains not liking being put into host bodies. So, theoretically, she could have just rebuilt anyone she knows well, or even, I suppose, tweaked versions of some of the humans whose code she read while in the Forge. This is Westworld, so I think it's fair to say that in principle Dolores could have brought back almost any of the characters we know about. But in reality, of course, Dolores will have chosen the hosts she brings with her carefully. One, Bernard, is someone who will work against her, so the others need to be loyal, buy into her agenda in some way, or at the very least be malleable. These hosts need to be her core team in achieving her plan, and we know that this is particularly the case for Charlotte. In the episode 3 trailer, we see Dolores respond to Charlotte asking why she had to do it by saying, "Because I trust you." This isn't some random host inside Charlotte Hale, it's someone Dolores trusts to do what she wants them to do. Another thing Dolores says to them is, "Remember who you are." This is a curious thing to say to a host, even one who is being brought back in someone else's body in the outside world. Does it imply that the host may have been mixed up at some point, so they do need to remember who they really are, rather than just who they were turned into? Perhaps. Finally, and probably most tellingly, we have the body language of Charlotte Hale in the trailers, and the way that Dolores interacts with her. Almost every shot we have of Charlotte before she goes into Delos and her job undercover, she appears uncertain, worried, confused. She asks why it has to be her and seems to be having problems adjusting to everything. Dolores doesn't seem to be angry or frustrated about this at all. In fact, she has a very caring, almost tender approach. She gets down to Charlotte's level to talk to her, uses simple language, hugs her, and seems genuinely concerned. All the evidence suggests that this is a host that Dolores has some kind of deep connection with. So, who is it? Well, we should probably first note the fact that as this is Westworld, maybe they are playing tricks with us on the timeline. Perhaps we've seen Dolores as Charlotte in Delos before she changed back into her own body, or perhaps Dolores has made two of herself, or we are just looking at a simulation within a simulation within a simulation, or whatever. But I don't think we've got too much evidence right now that any of those things are true. Everything we've seen suggests that Dolores put a host into Charlotte Hale's body, and we need to figure out who. And I think there really are only three options. This is clearly something of a tender soul, someone Dolores needs or wants to be nurturing and caring towards. Someone she wants in the outside world, not just because she trusts them, but because they mean something to her. The first option is that this is Maeve's daughter. I'm grateful to one of my patrons, Susan Dunkel, thanks Susan, for this suggestion because the uncertainty and facial expressions Charlotte is making certainly look childlike. Dolores talks in a very simple, childlike way to her, getting on her knees, talking to her about who she needs to pretend to be, and so on. Added to which, there would definitely be a tactical advantage for Dolores to have Maeve's daughter. Dolores isn't stupid. She knows, like Bernard knows, that the host most able to stop her is Maeve, and that Maeve's key weakness, as Dolores would see it, is her daughter. So if Maeve comes after her, Dolores can protect herself. But as much as I like this theory, I'm not convinced that Dolores would trust such an important mission, taking control of Delos, to a host that, although she may well have lived many more years than her physical experience suggests, is programmed as a child. It would be hard indeed for her to take on impersonating the acting chief executive of a multi-billion-dollar business, added to which Dolores has barely met her, so trusting her loyalty so hugely seems a stretch. But what about Teddy? This, I will admit, has been my working theory since the end of Season 2. Dolores does care about him. She can also completely trust him to be endlessly loyal to her. She is his cornerstone, after all. There's also a pleasing, and I'm sure not unintentional, symmetry between this shot of Dolores holding the dead Teddy in Season 2 and her holding the newly reborn host within Charlotte in Season 3. But the fact remains that Dolores put him into the sublime at the end of Season 2. Sure, she could have taken another copy of him with her to the outside world, but that would seem to undermine why she did it. She wanted to let him enjoy that digital heaven and not have to face the traumas of the outside world, or else why do it? And would Teddy really be that uncertain and worried about being brought back by Dolores? I don't think so. Which brings me to the third option, and the one I think is most likely to be right. Peter Abernathy, Dolores' father. We know how much Dolores cares about her father, so it makes sense of how we see her talking to Charlotte and being so patient with her. And even of the slightly childlike language Dolores uses around Charlotte. She always slipped back into her pure rancher's daughter persona when she was talking to her father, calling him Daddy, holding him close and kissing him on the head, for example. It makes sense of her telling him to remember who he is, because his personality was jumbled up a lot during seasons 1 and 2. Dolores will want him to get back to being her father. It makes sense of why he was the one chosen to go into Delos. He is one of the hosts most used to leading, certainly more so than either Teddy or Maeve's daughter. His backstory was as a decorated lawman, and in his previous build as the Professor, he was an educated man and a leader, and Dolores does trust him completely. It makes sense of how he could easily slip into parent mode in putting Charlotte's child to bed. He was a father. Teddy isn't, and obviously neither is Maeve's daughter. And finally, Peter Abernathy being Charlotte does perhaps also explain this curious shot we have from the trailer of there being blood on a wound on Charlotte's forearm. When we last saw Peter Abernathy in the Delos Mesa hub, he was restrained by bolts fired through his forearms in that exact spot. If he is undergoing some kind of tricky transitioning to his new body, might he be also experiencing some kinds of flashbacks, or maybe even some kind of phantom limb syndrome, where his mind is convinced he is still Peter Abernathy, bolted to that chair? His unwillingness to be her is also obvious. She, Charlotte, was the person who did all that to him in the first place, cramming his brain full of the encryption key data, sending him mad, unable to even recognise his own daughter at times, then had him restrained in such a cruel way. He is being asked to become his tormentor and care for her child. His reluctance is understandable. So, there you have it. I think the host most likely to be in Charlotte Hale's body is Peter Abernathy, Dolores' father. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below, or join me on Sunday at 5 PM EST for my pre-show livestream. In Deep Geek, we'll be covering Season 3 of Westworld in full. The link to my Westworld Season 3 playlist is on the left of your screen and in the description below. So please click on that if you want more episode breakdowns, discussions and theory videos about this season. Or if you'd like to support In Deep Geek or get access to some content I create just for my patrons, please click on the link on the right of your screen. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you again soon.